I want to talk about the English language and why so many people in Britain can't speak it. This week, the former integration czar, Dame Louise Casey, said Britain should set a date for everyone living here to be able to speak English to help heal the growing problem of segregation. Already I can hear the liberal lefties screaming that this is racist and disrespects particular religions. Looking at you, Afua, governments and public institutions cannot fear being demonised for trying to stamp out segregation, misogyny and patriarchy. People who want to live here and share in Britain's fantastic spoils must be prepared to integrate. They can't shut themselves away in closed communities, taking what this country has to offer, but giving nothing back. And if they can't speak English, they can't give anything back. Segregation leads to alienation, and that's dangerous. But this isn't just about migration and immigration. It's about equality for women, particularly Muslim women, according to Dame Louise, many of whom speak no English at all. So it's simple. If you come here and you refuse to learn our language, you don't get to stay.
It's actually lovely to have you rejoin the side of feminism, Carole.
It's lovely to have you patronising me again. It's so nice.
Campaigner against misogyny. I'm enjoying that. You said so many people can't speak English. Yeah. So I have a couple of stats for you. So the number of people who say they can't speak English well, it's 1.3% of society. The number of the people you're talking about who can't speak English at all, 0.3%.
136,000 It's a lot of people.
0.3% of society. So the idea that we're kind of in this society stuffed full of people who can't speak English, which is what I kind of
Do you not care about the ones who can't?
No, I do. And on that, I agree with you. I think you will not have equality of opportunity if you can't speak English. And that's why I have been so critical of government spending cuts to ESOL, which is English for speakers of other languages, which has been cut by more than £100 million in recent years. So my critique of you is not what you're saying per se, because I agree. I think people need to be able to speak English if they are to thrive in this country. My critique is that instead of seeing this for what it is, which is a failure of leadership, a failure of government policy, you're putting the emphasis on individual people as if it's sometimes their negligence.
You have a responsibility to learn to speak the language. It's arrogant and disrespectful not to speak the language.
It's our responsibility to have services that allow people
and we have them. And we have them. We gave 20 million quid. David Cameron, 2 years ago, 20 million quid. I think the others might want to pop in.
20 million, Carole. They've been cut by 100 million.
Yes, and they're getting 50 million this year.
So why is it that you're so passionate about people speaking English, but not willing to see that you don't think it's something that's
I think it's a personal responsibility.
So it's therefore.
Carole, I was with you until you said...
We have to go.
I was with you, you had me at hello, but you lost me at they can't give something back. Just because you can't speak English, you could be working in a job...
What can you give back?
Well, you could be contributing to society. Where I am totally with you, and I find the numbers that Afwa's gone through is quite interesting, is if you're living in this country, which hopefully we all agree is a great country, if you are going to benefit from what this country offers, it would seem to me to make sense that you speak the language. I worry about, and I don't pretend to know, but I hear about there are areas in cities such as Blackburn and Bradford and other areas, where I am told that, I've not been there personally, you just don't hear English spoken. I don't know that's particularly healthy. I also question the amount of money that has to be spent by the NHS, by local courts and other services, local councils, on interpretations and interpreters for council leaflets. If you happen to be in Spain, or you live in France, or you live in wherever it might be, Portugal, everything comes through the door and it's your responsibility. So I think there's a cost there. All that being said, I don't quite... And I think it's very interesting what Dame Louise said, but what are you ultimately going to do if you have, for the purpose of debate, a little old lady living in Bolton who just cannot, and she's come from India, and she cannot get the level? Are you honestly going to say we're going to kick her out?
I'm not talking about a personal example here, please. Yeah. I mean, this is clearly something that affects my communities directly, and it affects me directly. And I was with you until you said a different line, and that was when you said if you don't learn English, you should leave.
Go home.
Now, the reason that affects me personally is that
Would you like me to go home?
So my
What, South West London?
Your home's Wimbledon.
All the way to Wimbledon.
My mother speaks English as well as all of us, but my stepmom, my parents are divorced, my stepmom, who my father remarried, recently wanted to, with my father, adopt a Syrian refugee child because she can't have children for herself. And she was refused because they told her that the foster... it was fostering, not adopting, and the foster caring services told her that her English wasn't good enough, and so they refused a child
there's a
at
point
home.
there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Point.
So back 8 years ago, we at Quilliam issued a report called Triple Paralysis. And the paralysis we looked at that was discriminating against Pakistani and Bangladeshi, South Asian, Muslim, British women was threefold. One, they were Muslim. Second, they were immigrants. And third, they were women.
Yes.
And so we found that they were the most deprived economically, challenged economically in the country. They had the least social mobility. They were the least employed. And they were the group that spoke the least
and they will
English.
always have low-status employment if they don't
speak English.
But
Now, what I'm worried about...
They are the highest
exactly.
Definitely something needs to be done. But on the cuts point that Afua mentioned, I agree, because actually, if we have a look at this, there has been a 60% funding cut in real terms when it comes to teaching English language. And again, 8 years ago, we recommended the government continue to spend on teaching English language because it's the only way people like my stepmom can actually learn. What I wouldn't want to do, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, Carole, is if her English isn't good enough to adopt a Syrian refugee child, I'm sure you wouldn't say that she should be expelled from this country.
No, but the point of it, her English...
I want you to address that because your last line was quite offensive.
Well, I'm just not going to address you in the order you said. I want to say, if she's going to adopt a Syrian child, she has to engage with schools, with local authorities, with local services. So it makes absolute sense for her to
she shouldn't be expelled for not being able to speak English, should she?
Majid, why should the taxpayer pay for your stepmum to learn English?
Yeah, well, actually, the real question there is actually a deeper question as to whether, when it comes to these sorts of market failures, the taxpayer should step in or not. Because actually, if she could get work, she'd be paying taxes and would then pay the taxpayer back.
I mean, some would
so
say,
there is an economic argument.
Some would say, get your stepmum, go out and learn English yourself. Some might say.
Well, she's tried. She has tried.
Rachel,
I think that we've identified two problems. One, there isn't the availability of English language lessons because of the cuts. But two, there isn't really the will on the part of those who who are in this country living in segregated areas where they speak their own language to go and learn English and then therefore integrate better.
That's a problem.
So we've got two problems which are actually contributing towards, for example, I would argue the Asian grooming gang situation.
Yes,
if you had women, if you had the women in these families who are part of society and not sitting at home amongst their own kind, who actually were involved, who could go to the authorities, speak to the authorities about this, you wouldn't have these problems.
Let's look at what Dame Louise Casey has to say about this.
English language is absolutely vital. It's our common denominator. It's what brings us all together as a nation. So I want more done on English language skills. I want more opportunities for people in these areas around employment. We need people out of low status employment like taxis and chicken shops, though they're all useful, but they need to have a trajectory that goes further into life. I want more mixing opportunities for all young people, whether that's black, white, rich, poor, Muslim, non-Muslim. We all need to mix with each other as we're growing up. That would make us a stronger and healthier nation.
What Dame Louise also says is that too many public institutions in this country have spent too much money making life too easy for people who can't speak English. Now, let's just give you some of the costs here for translations. Edinburgh City Council's translations included Kurdish, Badani, Sorani, dialects, all sorts of dialects. Crawley County Council paid £600 to have 12 lifestyle magazines translated into English because one woman who spoke only Urdu complained about it. You have, I think it was Warwickshire County Council paid hundreds of pounds to have a weight-busting leaflet transferred into Punjabi. Now, and it's costing, wait a minute, it's costing public services councils who are on the verge of going bankrupt companies, it's costing them 150 million quid a year for translation services. People have a responsibility to
stop that. What we said 8 years ago is take the money you save from stopping those translation exercises and put them towards teaching English language courses. That's what we said 8 years ago.
Carole, what you're talking about, you're you're conflating so many things. And now you seem to be on the side of not pushing councils to breaking point financially, which you weren't necessarily when I raised austerity. The point is, there's bad public decision-making in councils. That's ridiculous. You know, if a council's squeezed, it can't provide basic services, it shouldn't be translating 12 lifestyle magazines into a number of languages. At the same time, I don't think you can blame minority communities for bad decisions made by local councils. And I see this whole question of English as people who... Can you let me finish my point, Carole? Let me finish my point.
You said it 10 minutes ago.
This whole debate about people not being able to speak English, I see this as a symptom and not a cause. We're talking about it as if it's a cause. The reason that they're not integrated, the reason they're not employed is because they don't speak English. The reason they don't speak English is because they're living in segregated areas, over-characterised by poverty, lacking in opportunity, and not properly serviced by public services.
Guys, we've got...
responsibility.
And they're structural.
The language of the country they live in.
Talking of the consequences of poisonous language in this case, we've got to move on.